Hello and welcome. This will be a new series focusing on the many coins of colonial America. It will focus on the 13 colonies that would become the United States, but may occasionally look at other coins used elsewhere in the American colonies. Colonial coins are a fascinating part of U.S. numismatic history that is unfortunately neglected by many specializing in American coins. There is much to collect from this time period, with coins from all over the world being used, and a crop of counterfeit and local issues as well. My goal for this series will be to educate on this period of U.S. numismatic history. I am a novice collector, and thus have limited expendable income. Many of the coins featured will be relatively affordable, at least for the beginning. Up until this point, the most I have spent on a coin is $100, with most being obtained for less than $30. As a result, this is also sort of an introduction to affordable colonial coin collecting. I know many of the well-known series fetch pretty pennies on the marketplace, but there are many interesting coins that can be had for an affordable price if you know what to look for. As the series goes on and my collection matures, higher quality and rarer coins may become more common. So this may not hold for the whole thing, but at least to begin with, it will be relatively affordable. Currently, there is a lack of information online regarding colonial coins. This is a shame, because as I mentioned earlier, it is a fascinating era in U.S. history. Collecting colonial coins is in some ways more akin to collecting ancient coins. There are a few popular resources to acquire information on what coins were used and how to identify them. The Red and Blue books, which many use to collect U.S. coins, does contain some information on the more popular coins used in the colonial period, but are far from painting a complete picture of what was used at the time. In fact, some of the coins included in these books were never even used in the colonies. In addition, there are hundreds of varieties of coin that were known to have been used but are not included in these books. As a result, these books are really only scratching the surface and a base level resource for determining which coins were and weren't used in colonial America. Many of the best resources are hard to find or in some cases expensive books. There are a few resources online, however most that do exist are relatively basic and go in very little depth. As a result, this hobby can require a large amount of research that can be off-putting to new hobbyists. I hope by making these videos that I make U.S. colonial coinage more approachable by providing information on these coins as well as sources for future research. As mentioned earlier, I am still a novice and making many mistakes. Feel free to correct any in the comments, though do so politely. If I make a claim and back it up with a source, please provide a source disproving my claim to maintain good scholarship. While I am a novice, I do have an academic background in the field of history, and as such, I will provide a list of sources consulted in each video. This will mainly be secondary sources, as I do not have time to consult many primary sources for this project. These videos will be a high-level overview of the coins featured, but hopefully the resources provided can help you in your own research. There are many great and in-depth books on these topics available, though it can be hard to figure out which books contain information on which coins. Generally, I will provide sources at the beginning of each video. With the exception of this one, the information available in this video is extremely high level and common knowledge in the field, and as such, I don't feel that sources are necessary. Before we discuss any particular coins, we need to have an understanding of how money in the English colonies worked. The value of coins at this time was in their metal content. Really what people were after was the gold, silver, and copper contained in the coin. The colonial monetary system was based off of that of the British. The pound was the most valuable unit of currency, equal to about a quarter ounce of gold. A 1 pound coin was referred to as a guinea. The pound was made up of 20 shillings, with each shilling containing slightly less than 0.2 ounces of silver. A shilling was made of 12 pence. At the time, coins down to 1 pence, also known as a penny, were still silver. Half pence and farthings, which are 1/4 pence, were copper, and the most common forms of coin used in everyday transactions. During this time period, the British Empire operated under mercantilism, an economic system which sought to maximize trade advantage. Trade balances were measured by gold and silver flowing into and out of the country. In order to maintain a positive trade balance, the export of gold and silver to the colonies was banned. British gold and silver coins did make it to the colonies anyway, but in small numbers. In addition, at this time, the Royal Mint operated to generate a profit. Since most profit was made from the coinage of gold and silver, the coinage of small change was neglected. This resulted in chronic coin shortages throughout the 18th, 19th, and 17th centuries. These shortages were even more acute in the colonies due to gold and silver import bans and relatively slow flow of copper coins from Great Britain. Throughout the empire, this coin shortage was filled by local tokens and counterfeits, though this was especially true in the colonies, where counterfeits far outnumbered genuine regal issues. In order to keep commerce flowing, the colonies had to get creative. Other commodity-based currencies were adopted to fill the void left by the lack of currency. In Virginia, tobacco was traded as money, and taxes could be paid in tobacco. Massachusetts and New England were similar, so they generally traded in farm produce such as corn, beans, and squash. Musket balls and gunpowder were also commonly traded as currency. These items were easy to transport and had the advantage of being non-perishable, as well as being in constant demand on the frontier. In the Northeast, wampum, a Native American bead made from clamshells, was traded as currency as well. The practice was adapted from Native Americans, particularly the Iroquois, and spread to the colonists. Most of these alternative commodity currencies began to fall out of use in the early 1700s, as the currency supply became a little bit more stable, and a new type of currency was developed: paper money. Paper currency was used extensively, and the colonies were the first place in the Western world to adapt it. Most of the colonies, there were two main types of paper currency: land bank currency, which banked up the value with a section of land, and fiat paper currency, which was not backed up. Despite not being backed up, fiat currency was still generally accepted because the colonies issuing it guaranteed its acceptance for paying taxes. Each colony printed their own paper money. Though they all were valued in terms of shillings, inflation related to excessive note printing meant that a shilling from one colony did not equal that from another. For example, a Massachusetts shilling was often far more valuable than a shilling from Rhode Island, the adjacent colony. Often notes would travel outside their original colony to be used, and it wasn't uncommon for newspapers to publish exchange rates to help the flow of commerce. Regardless of these other forms of currency, coins, especially gold and silver, were always preferred. As previously mentioned, the value of a coin was in its metal value. If you knew the weight and purity of a coin, you could easily trade coins regardless of origin. As a result of this, coins from all over the world were used in the colonies. For silver coins, the most common were the Spanish 8 reals, also known as a piece of 8, as well as its fractional pieces. In particular, those minted in Mexico were common in the colonies. This is the coin the US dollar was based off of, with the first US dollars being the same size and containing the same amount of silver as an 8 real. For copper coins, the most common were British and British counterfeit coins, made either in Britain or the colonies. As mentioned previously, counterfeits were far more common than legitimate issues. Gold, in general, was rare and very highly valued, used more as a store of wealth and for few very high-value transactions. And with that, we wrap up the introduction to American colonial coins. Within the next few weeks, I'll begin posting videos featuring coins from the time period. The overview only touched on a few of the numerous coins issued in the colonies. I'm excited to share my collection with you, and hope you'll find the story behind the coins as interesting as I do.